I remember the exact words. "This hospital doesn't need your analog approach anymore, Art. We're going digital fast." Bryce Caldwell Jr., all of 29 MBA, hot off the press, delivered the line with the casual cruelty of youth. He was perched on the edge of the massive oak desk in my office, the one that had belonged to Dr. Eleanor Vance, Mercy General's founder. Before me, he didn't even look at me, too busy admiring his designer watch. "My name is Arthur Coleman. I'm 58. For 22 years, I'd been the chief operating officer at Mercy General Hospital here in Chicago, Illinois. Not the face of the hospital, but the one ensuring the heart kept beating, managing everything from surgical suite turnover to our patient census during city-wide emergencies." He just waved away 2 decades of dedication, of navigating life and death logistics like swatting a fly. A part of me, the part that had stared down pandemics and balanced impossible budgets, wanted to verbally dissect him. Instead, a strange calm settled. I simply nodded, my face a mask. "I understand." I stood, gathered my few personal items, a picture of my late wife, a service award, a worn copy of Osler's Equanimitas. No shouting, no begging, just a quiet exit, leaving him to his brave new digital world. He probably thought he'd won. What Bryce, in his rush to disrupt, hadn't bothered to research was the ironclad clause Dr. Vance herself had insisted on in my contract. The signs had been there, subtle at first, then glaring. The first tremor was 6 months ago when Bryce, Dr. Vance's nephew, was appointed to the board after her semi-retirement. Suddenly, my carefully vetted proposals for upgrading our diagnostic imaging department were too legacy-focused. He wanted AI-driven solutions, untested but flashy. My decades of experience ensuring patient safety and effective CapEx, capital expenditure planning, were dismissed as old-school thinking. The second sign was his constant questioning of our staffing ratios, particularly our experienced nursing staff. He'd float terms like lean operations and synergistic automation, clearly unimpressed by my arguments that quality patient care couldn't be reduced to an algorithm. The third, and most telling, was when he publicly overruled my decision during a capital budget meeting. Diverting funds from a critical ER expansion, I'd championed one vital for handling patient surges towards a patient experience app that promised more sizzle than substance. That was the moment I knew my time was limited. His vision for Mercy General was fundamentally at odds with the patient first ethos Dr. Vance and I had painstakingly built. Dr. Vance. She'd handpicked me from a smaller community hospital when I was 36. "Art," she'd said, her gaze direct and kind, "you understand that a hospital is more than bricks and mortar. It's about people, patients, and staff. I need someone who gets that." For over 2 decades we'd worked side by side. I wasn't just an administrator, I was her operational right hand. I'd overseen the implementation of our first electronic health record system, a monumental task that, despite initial hurdles, significantly improved care coordination. I'd led the hospital through the H1N1 crisis, working 20-hour days to ensure we had beds, staff, and supplies. When the city faced a major power outage, it was my contingency plan that kept our life support systems running. Dr. Vance trusted me implicitly. She knew I'd always prioritize patient well-being and fiscal responsibility over fads. She valued my experience, my calm in a crisis, my ability to get disparate departments from surgery to sanitation to work as a cohesive unit. Bryce's philosophy was the antithesis of this. He saw patients as data points, staff as interchangeable cogs, and tradition as an impediment. For him, modernization meant gutting the human element. He spoke of disrupting healthcare, but what I saw was a disruption of care itself. He championed automated check-in kiosks while our elderly patients struggled, preferring a human face. He pushed for telemedicine for complex diagnoses where a hands-on examination was critical. My attempts to explain the nuances, the importance of the doctor-patient relationship, the ethical considerations embedded in our JCIHO accreditation standards, were met with condescending smiles and pronouncements about embracing the future. The conflict wasn't just about methods, it was about the soul of the hospital. The purge wasn't limited to me. In the week leading up to my dismissal, I'd seen it coming for others. Sarah Holloway, our director of nursing with 30 years of experience, a woman who knew every nurse by name and could anticipate staffing needs with uncanny accuracy, was suddenly under review for performance inefficiencies. Dr. Peterson, our chief of cardiology, a pioneer in minimally invasive techniques, was told his research grants were being relocated to more innovative ventures. It was a systematic dismantling of institutional knowledge, a targeted culling of anyone over 50 who might question Bryce's breakneck, ill-conceived changes. We, the old guard, who had built Mercy General's reputation for excellence, were now seen as obstacles. There was a grim solidarity among us, hushed conversations in the cafeteria, knowing glances in the hallways. This wasn't just restructuring. It was a hostile takeover of the hospital's culture by someone who didn't understand its foundations. That evening, after clearing my office, I sat at my kitchen table, the silence of the house amplifying the turmoil in my chest. I pulled out my employment contract, a document I hadn't looked at in years. My lawyer, Ben Carter, a sharp, no-nonsense guy I'd played poker with for years, had reviewed it when Dr. Vance first offered me the COO position. "This Article 7 is your parachute, Art," he'd said back then. "Elena really wants to make sure you're secure." And there it was, Section 7, Paragraph BZ, in the event of termination without cause, as explicitly defined in Appendix AS, including gross negligence, criminal conviction, or material breach of fiduciary duty, the executive shall be entitled to a severance payment equal to 36 months of current base salary and continuation of health benefits. 36 months. Bryce's monologue approach, comment hardly constituted cause. A grim smile touched my lips. Dr. Vance, even in her planning for the future, had protected me. Ben confirmed it the next morning. "It's airtight, Art. They either pay up or we make this very public and very messy. Their definition of cause is incredibly narrow. His going digital fast isn't on that list." Hope, cold and sharp, pierced through the anger and humiliation. This wasn't just about money, it was about the principle. The meeting took place a week later in a sterile downtown law office. Bryce sat flanked by two young, aggressive lawyers from a big corporate firm. Ben, with his slightly rumpled suit and calm demeanor, seemed almost out of place, but I knew his mind was a steel trap. Bryce started, "Mr. Coleman, we believe a standard 3-month severance is appropriate given the new strategic direction of Mercy General." Ben simply slid a copy of my contract across the table. Section 7 highlighted. 36 months, Mr. Caldwell has stipulated. Approximately $975,000 plus benefits. One of Bryce's lawyers, a woman named Ms. Albright, scoffed. "That clause is clearly an anachronism. We'll argue constructive cause based on Mr. Coleman's resistance to modernization." Ben raised an eyebrow. Resistance, or prudent counsel against rash, unproven strategies that could jeopardize patient care and the hospital's IPA compliance. "We have extensive documentation of Mr. Coleman's contributions and his attempts to engage constructively. Do you have documented warnings?" "Performance improvement plans." Silence. Bryce's face tightened. "This is an internal hospital matter. We don't need to air our strategic shifts. Terminating multiple senior, long-tenured staff members without clear, documented cause, particularly those in a protected age bracket, isn't just an internal matter, Mr. Caldwell," Ben said, his voice hardening slightly. "It has legal ramifications. We are prepared to litigate fully." Just then, Dr. Vance walked in. Bryce looked stunned. "Aunt Eleanor, what are you doing here?" Dr. Vance ignored him, her gaze fixed on me, then on the contract. "Bryce," she said, her voice quiet but firm, "pay the man what he is owed. It was my agreement with him. Honor it." She looked at me. "Arthur, I am so sorry this happened." Bryce, fuming but clearly outmaneuvered by his aunt's moral authority and the legal realities, instructed his lawyers to draw up the papers. I walked out with my dignity intact and the resources to plan my next move. The severance was substantial, but the victory felt hollow without purpose. The first person I called was Sarah Holloway, the director of nursing Bryce had targeted. She'd been forced into early retirement a few days after me. We met at a small cafe. "They gave me 6 months' pay and an NDA," she said, her voice laced with bitterness. 28 years at Mercy, and that's it." "What are your plans?" I asked. She shrugged. "Look for something, I guess. But who's hiring a 56-year-old nurse administrator?" I then reached out to Dr. Peterson, the cardiologist, and Michael Chen, our former head of IT, who'd quit in disgust after Bryce demanded he implement a patient data system Michael knew was insecure. One by one, I connected with the experienced professionals Bryce had cast aside. We started meeting informally, a support group that quickly morphed into a think tank. The shared sense of injustice was a powerful bond, but so was our shared commitment to quality healthcare. We knew the city's healthcare landscape, its gaps, its needs. An idea began to form. A few weeks later, I had lunch with Marcus Thorne. Marcus was a healthcare venture capitalist, but one with a conscience. He'd made his fortune investing in biotech, but was now focused on innovative care models that prioritized patient outcomes over pure profit. I'd known him socially for years. I laid out my idea to a network of specialized outpatient clinics, focusing on chronic disease management and preventative care, staffed by experienced clinicians leveraging technology wisely, not blindly. The old guard's revenge art? He asked, a smile playing on his lips. More like the experienced guard's contribution, I corrected. Bryce is gutting Mercy General's core strengths. There's a vacuum being created for quality, personalized care. Marcus listened intently as I detailed our potential team, Sarah's nursing expertise, Peterson's cardiology insights, Michael's secure IT frameworks. He was intrigued by our plan to use a hybrid model, combining in-person consultations with robust, secure telehealth for follow-ups, focusing on a patient-centric approach that Bryce's model was abandoning. I like it, Marcus said finally. You have the team, the experience, and a clear market need. Let's draw up a proposal. I think Thorne Health Ventures can get behind this. We called our new company Continuum Care Partners. Within 3 months, Continuum Care Partners was more than an idea. We leased a modest office space and began outreach. Our reputation preceded us. Former patients from Mercy General, unhappy with the increasingly impersonal care, sought us out. Referring physicians, frustrated with Bryce's new protocols, started sending patients our way. We weren't directly competing with Mercy General's emergency services or acute inpatient care, but we were definitely siphoning off their lucrative outpatient and chronic care segments. News travels fast in the medical community. I heard whispers Mercy General's patient satisfaction scores were plummeting. Staff morale was at an all-time low. Experienced nurses and doctors were leaving in droves, not just the ones Bryce had fired. Their much-touted patient experience app was a bug-ridden disaster, and their bed occupancy rate in elective surgery wings was declining because specialists were referring elsewhere. Bryce's digital fast approach was stumbling hard. One evening, my phone rang. Caller ID Eleanor Vance. Arthur, she said, her voice strained. I need to talk to you. Urgently. We met at her home the next day. She looked older, worn down. Mercy General is in trouble, Arthur, she said, no preamble. Bryce, he's in over his head. The board is deeply concerned. We've lost 3 major insurance contracts. Key department heads are threatening to resign. She sighed. I made a mistake. I thought he had the business acumen, the modern perspective. I underestimated his arrogance and his disdain for experience. She looked me straight in the eye. The board wants to know if you'd consider coming back. Not just you. Your team. They're talking about a merger. Your Continuum Care Partners acquiring Mercy General's outpatient services, and you taking a leading role in restructuring the entire hospital. I was stunned. This was more than I could have imagined. Why me, Eleanor? Because, she said, a faint smile returning. You were always the heart of Mercy General's operations. You know how to fix this. And frankly, Arthur, you're the only one the remaining staff and the board will trust. The negotiations were complex but surprisingly swift. Marcus Thorne, representing Continuum, was a shrewd negotiator. The Mercy General board, chastened and desperate, was eager to find a solution. The deal was structured as a merger, but in essence, Continuum Care Partners, the nimble startup, was taking operational control of the struggling giant's ambulatory and chronic care divisions, with a clear mandate to overhaul the rest. I would return not just as COO, but as president of hospital operations, with a significant stake in the newly formed entity. Thomas and Sarah would get their old departments back, with expanded responsibilities. Bryce Caldwell Jr. was effectively sidelined, relegated to a vaguely defined, strategic innovation role with no real power, his shares diluted. The day the merger was announced, I walked back into Mercy General. It felt different. The tension that had permeated the halls was still there, but now it was mixed with a palpable sense of relief, of hope. My first all-hands meeting was packed. I didn't talk about revenge or vindication. I talked about rebuilding, about patient care, about respecting experience while embracing true, thoughtful innovation. I laid out our plan to stabilize operations, reinvest in staff, and restore Mercy General's reputation. Sarah Holloway, standing beside me, spoke about rebuilding the nursing corps, her voice ringing with renewed confidence. Rebuilding Mercy General was a marathon, not a sprint. We integrated Continuum's patient-centric models, streamlined Bryce's chaotic tech implementations, and most importantly, we listened to the staff. We brought back some of the experienced doctors and nurses who had left. The fusion of Continuum's agile approach with Mercy General's established infrastructure began to yield results. Patient satisfaction scores climbed. Staff turnover decreased. The hospital started to feel like a place of healing again, not just a business. Young, talented individuals, initially drawn by Bryce's talk of disruption, found themselves thriving under a leadership that valued their ideas but also provided experienced guidance. A year later, I stood with Dr. Vance on the hospital's new rooftop garden, a project she'd always dreamed of. Below us, Mercy General was humming with a quiet efficiency I hadn't seen in years. "You know, Arthur," she said, "that severance clause, I put it in because I valued you, and I feared someone someday might not. I never imagined it would be the catalyst for saving the hospital itself." I smiled. Sometimes, Eleanor, the old ways have a wisdom the new ways forget. We watched the city lights begin to twinkle. It wasn't about being analog or digital, it was about being human, about experience and innovation walking hand in hand. The crisis had been a painful teacher, but the lesson was profound. True strength lies not in discarding the past, but in building upon it with wisdom and respect. My own crisis had, in the end, become an opportunity to reaffirm that simple, enduring truth.